the work of an Iowa-based organization, Bailing Out Benji, kind of helped spark this investigation. Can you tell me about that?
That resolution filed in King County Superior Court requires the company to pay the state $3.75 million with interest.
Bailing Out Benji regularly looks through these records of dogs' movement from state to state.
Bailing Out Benji
played a key part in unraveling a nationwide puppy scheme.
Bailing Out Benji,
an organization that's been working across the country to stop the pipeline of puppy mill breeders.
Bailing Out Benji.
I will use my voice because it will come out, and I will keep doing it until there are no more puppy mill dogs.
Welcome to Bailing Out Benji's podcast, Truth, Lies, and Puppy Mills. I'm Kristen here with Mindi. And Mindi, what are we talking about today?
We're going to talk about something people have been begging us to talk about for the last year, and that's our field research. And why, what, where, who, all of those things we've decided we're going to dig into in the next 6 or so episodes. I don't know how many episodes, but we're going to do a whole series on our field research.
We won't commit to a number, but I'm really excited. I'm really excited for this series because this is part of what we do that to me is crucial. This is where it's at. And it always excites me to hear stories. So I'm excited for this series. I feel like if we put a number on how many episodes, it will just keep adding.
Yeah.
Because there is so much to share. So.
Well, and we're research based. So every episode we talk about is research or field research, or someone is out, like Jelaine is at an event this weekend, right? Mm-hmm. You're going to be at an event this weekend. So we're constantly conducting what we call quote unquote field research, but it's always been with the community. Right. And it's always been with who buys puppies or who adopts puppies. That's the spaces we're in. And over the last year, June is our year anniversary, if we want to call it that. For the last year, we've been able to actually go inside of USDA kennels for the first time and see a completely different side of the industry that we've been trying to change from the outside.
Yeah, and that is, to me, is pivotal. How can we do what we say we're trying to do if we don't have that information? Otherwise, I feel like you're just going off of what you think to be true, which is not super useful. So to have that insider look to me, and granted, we're not in every breeder out there. We haven't been to that many, but even just to get across the threshold. And for me, I haven't been around pre-field research, these breeder visits. So to me, this is oh yeah, this is a no-brainer. But it's not. That was, I remember you saying, if you had told me a year ago I would have been going to visit this place, I would have told you were just bananas. That's never going to happen. So to hear your story of how that happened, what led up to it, what your thoughts and feelings were with that, that's exciting to hear, and just to acknowledge that shift.
Right. And I think so. People are kind of wondering. I think they're wondering. Not a lot of people are asking us a whole lot of questions, but we hear through the grapevine what questions and concerns people have, and people are wondering why us? How did Bailing Out Benji? How are we the ones who got the invite? People who don't have the answers are making assumptions, right? We've talked about that in a few episodes, and they assume the worst of us, or they assume our mission has changed in some way. But really, it all started because my animal welfare friends in this space told me that there was going to be an online seminar for breeders, and it was hosted by Purdue University. And so they emailed this link around. You had to pay to attend it because it was a conference in person for breeders, but you could attend online. And so I attended online, and this was for the canine care program specifically, which we'll talk about sooner or later. But it was specific to breeders who are participating in that program. Okay. And so as an outsider, I was able to listen and learn and hear the why behind that program. Because before, I knew what the public knew. I knew that the breeders a part of this program sell to pet stores, or I knew that these breeders sell through brokers or online. And so pre our visits, we demonized everybody. We had very firm definitions. We had very firm slogans we hid behind. There was not a lot of flexibility, and we never acknowledged the gray area. So I think that was the most exciting and challenging part for me, is I was faced with, we, as Bailing Out Benji, we were faced with a path. And it was, you can go on the same path that you have been on for years and years and continue, or you can kind of forge your own path and make relationships, and I don't want to say friendships, but yeah, some friendships with people in the breeding community that I never thought we had anything in common, because they do breed at scale, as opposed to what my previous definition was of a responsible breeder, which is someone who's very, very small. So it has been challenging in the way that it's challenging my core beliefs as a person, and it's also really uncomfortable knowing that we are in an industry that doesn't celebrate or appreciate change and new ideas. We don't necessarily, human nature, we don't welcome new ideas. We don't welcome new voices very often. And so the excited part of me, I love going into these kennels and I love meeting these people. And I will say, we haven't been thrilled with everything we've seen. Like, it's not a blanket statement that just because we're in these facilities, we are endorsing them or are okay with it. But for us, it's so much more powerful to get off of that inspection record. We only get to see things from a piece of paper. And that piece of paper was very dependent on what the USDA inspector wrote or what the state inspector wrote. So now going inside for the first time, asking them, what is it like when the USDA comes? I even had a breeder tell me that it was scarier to have me on their or to have the USDA on their property than to have me on their property. So to hear perspectives from some people that still fear, quote unquote, the federal government coming in and telling them what to do, in some instances, they're more scared of the USDA than I ever imagined they would be. Yeah. Because I think that as animal advocates, we paint with a broad brush. So we assume the USDA is in bed with puppy mills, and we assume the pet stores are in bed with puppy mills. And while we have anecdotal evidence and real evidence of that being true, that doesn't mean everybody who has one of those titles believes the same thing or acts in the same way.
Right. And it's not fair to say, I mean, I think that's kind of, like you said, human nature, where absent information, something that we don't agree with, we're going to immediately assume. So, when we say we just assume the USDA is in bed with breeders. Well, now that we have changed our tack, now we have people like, Bailing Out Benji is in bed with the breeders. Like, listen, just because something's unexpected does not necessarily mean it's nefarious, right? Like, it's okay. And yeah, there's a lot to be learned about the stories that we make up versus finding out for ourselves, which is why going into these facilities is so important, because a piece of paper doesn't give you a 3D picture. So yeah, to base every opinion that you know about me based on what's on my
your
resume,
last doctor appointment
or my last doctor appointment does not give you any insight into who I am. Same thing with a system or an organization or a facility. So, and I think it needs to be acknowledged, like, you didn't just roll up to a facility and be like, oh, I was wrong. To say I was wrong or this is different than what I thought, that's big. And that is hard for an individual and for an organization to do, to make that big of a shift. You could easily...
And publicly. Very publicly.
You could easily have gone in and seen what you saw, which, like you said, this was not perfection. This wasn't, a giant couch with lots of puppies on it. It was still dogs in cages and
not cages.
In rooms. Yeah, not cages, what we think of like cages, but enclosures. And, but good breeding. Like you can't walk out of there and be like, those dogs are being abused. You could have, though. You totally could have stuck with that story and gone in and be like, nope, still hate it, still gonna rail against it, still, I'm gonna make up stories about what I saw and not be honest. You completely could have. And instead you took the path of humility, where you said, wow, okay, I did not think this was possible. I did not think this was happening. And that I mean, that deserves to be pointed out, that that's not easy for an individual or an organization to do. And that's one of the benefits of being such a small organization, is that we can pivot like that. We don't have these big motives that we're like, oh, if we change our message now, we're gonna lose all of this base.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that, like you said, you came in while we were already doing this and you're like, yeah, it all makes sense. But in my head, when I first started talking about this, I did it as a way of like sharing hope, because we've talked this whole podcast series about how hard our work is. It is not fun every day to see photos of dogs being abused and videos of dogs being abused, and the emails we get from the public who bought sick dogs or dogs that ended up dying. Like, it is such depressing work sometimes, and people get burnt out because of that. So last year, I had this experience. I posted about it on my own wall, my own Facebook page, and the anger I got was really surprising to me, because I was like, guys, we have hope now. Our work is working. We have educated, we have shamed, we have shouted, we have tried so hard to get there to be change in the puppy mill industry. And I am here to tell you that now I have seen, and to date, I mean, while this airs, I have now been on the property of 20 breeders, 3 brokers, and anecdotally, like dozens of pet stores, because I walk into pet stores when I'm in communities and I can see those as a consumer. I just didn't realize that even saying an Amish breeder I went to and I visited wasn't a puppy mill. I didn't know that I was going to spend the next 6 months of my life getting bullied and harassed by the very people I've called friends and colleagues for years. That first status I made, someone posted this, one of my colleagues made a comment and he was like, how dare you? What was your goal here? Why did you do this? And I was like, well, did you want me to lie? Like, yes, accepting the invite was probably the first act of betrayal in their eyes, because I was going, right? But after seeing what you see, it's not responsible, it's not ethical, it's not honest to not at least say those breeding facilities, those Amish breeders I met are not killing their animals. They're not causing harm to their animals. They have some of the best facilities I've ever seen, and they look like doggy daycares. Mm-hmm. I wasn't telling people to run out and go buy from them. I wasn't saying all pet stores should exist in perpetuity because of XYZ, but all of the people we've worked with for a decade were immediately like, you're the enemy. Yeah. And it was pretty quiet behind the scenes, but it was still I was under pressure. Our volunteers have been put under pressure to recant our statements. And it's like, what statement should I recant? We've all already agreed there are responsible breeders in the country. Mm-hmm. And then I just said, hey, I saw these breeders who are doing genetic testing. They are making sure that the adults are surrendered or are retired by an early age. They're not being bred their entire lives. I was pointing out things that we've been begging for from this very industry. And I was saying some of the breeders are doing it. And it was like blasphemy.
Yeah. And that really caught me off guard when I stepped into this work and then hear these things is, I mean, 2 things there that you said. So accepting the invite was your first act of betrayal. And that confuses me, because take it out of this world. Let's say I'm doing advocacy about child abuse. And I say this family that lives down the street from me is abusing their children. And that family says, come into our house, come spend a Saturday with us. And I'm like, no. Well, now I'm just accusing them based on, I don't know what. Like, if we're in the work of saying these facilities are bad and then someone invites us into a facility, why would we not go? Like, what do we stand to gain by turning down that invitation? And then the same, making that broader to the whole work that we're doing. If our work is to end inhumane breeding, and we see a breeder who is doing well, why wouldn't we celebrate that? Like, to me, that is what you said. Like, this is it. This is the work we've been doing. They're listening. Someone is listening. Consumers are listening and putting pressure on breeders. Breeders are listening and wanting to be better. investigators are listening and are trying to encourage breeders to, I mean, something's working, let's celebrate. And instead it's met with hostility. So again, if my goal is to reduce child abuse cases and I learned that they went down 10%, why am I mad? Like that I was so caught off guard to hear your stories. And then it makes me question the other people in the space. And so if your mission is to fix this problem and the problem seems to be getting better and you're upset, then I need clarification about your mission.
Right.
And I have to be careful to not make up stories like folks are doing with, our work when we don't know. And some of these organizations have shut us out. So we can't ask those questions of help me understand why this is bad. And I wish those were questions I could ask or conversations I could have, because I truly don't understand why anyone would be upset about it. I can kind of see, so maybe they're just pretending to be better and they're trying to pull one over on you so that you'll say they're great. But that's not, you've done this long enough to know that's not what's happening, that this isn't fake. And you're still not saying, hey, they're great, everyone should go buy from them. Like, if that was their goal, that's not what they got. Right. What they got was some breeders aren't as awful
as everyone's been saying,
as we've all been saying. Which, like you said earlier, we all acknowledge it's not all. Like, are people in this work saying every breeder is bad, hard stop? Is that, I don't know. Or do people say, well, of course, not every breeder's awful?
Yeah, there are people who say the slogan, another dog bred is a shelter dog dead. Like, that's an actual slogan that people say and have on protest signs. It rhymes. There are people who do not think there should be any breeding at all until the pet overpopulation crisis is solved. Okay. There are a lot of opinions, and some are rooted in, well, I don't want to say rooted in fact. I think that this is just such an emotional issue for us. And when we see animals that need us, when we see vulnerable creatures that need us, we are quick to help them and save them. We don't always have that energy for humanity, right? It is easier to demonize humans. It is easier to blame and shame humans and say they're the cause of the problem, when I think that just like we don't want to be painted with the same brush as our colleagues, and my goodness, they don't want to be judged with the same brush as we're doing. They don't want to have to answer for our work right now. It's the same thing in the breeding side. And I'm not trying to be like an apologist for the breeding community. I'm not trying to explain and tell people to go buy. But there is room for us to acknowledge, it makes sense that there's been some progress. We've all been doing this for so long. It makes sense that there has been some progress.
Yeah, and if there hadn't been, what have we all been doing?
Exactly. Right, and so the other weird part about all of this is most of the breeders we've met have been Amish, and we are going to talk, we're going to put our stance out there in a whole episode, but we don't believe in hating the Amish just to hate them, or the Mennonite community or anything like that. But I will say, like, those are the kennels that we've seen the most progress in. And getting to know them has been a really interesting perspective for us. But when I took that to social media, people were like, okay, yeah, cool. Like, some people got it until they found out that breeder sells to pet stores. And then immediately it was like, well, Mindi, you must be lying. They must be a puppy mill because they also sell to a pet store. And it's one of those things where it's like, there's nuance. Two things can be true at the same time. When Bailing Out Benji is looking at what we think puppy mills are, we are looking at how animals are raised. What do those conditions look like? Are those breeders genetically testing? All of that. Yeah. Yes, how they sell matters, but how they sell doesn't define them fully.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think that's what's been hard for the public to swallow. Because again, I said it in another episode, someone was like, but Mindi, you told me if a puppy is sold in a pet store, it came from a puppy mill. I was like, yeah, because that's what I believed at the time. And now I'm telling you, the data is showing something slightly different. There are still many puppy mills that sell to pet stores. There are many puppy mills that sell online, through the newspaper, through TikTok, everywhere. So it's like, how can we help the public understand how to avoid a bad breeder instead of just saying, don't go here, don't go here. Right. There has to be a nuanced discussion. And part of that has to start with us even saying, yes, there are responsible breeders that are preservation breeders. And yes, there are breeders who are not puppy mills that breed on a commercial scale. But that definition of puppy mill is really subjective to each person. So there might be an advocacy organization or a person who thinks if you have a USDA license, you're a puppy mill. Or if you have more than 50 dogs, you're a puppy mill. We can all come up with our own line. But what I'm telling you is that the kennels that I visited, for the most part, the kennels that I have visited, if a member of the public were to walk in and buy a dog directly, and then I told them it was a puppy mill, they would no longer trust me. And so that is my barometer for how we need to be testing the waters with all of this, because the public is what matters. They're the ones buying the dogs, right? And the dogs matter too. Of course the dogs matter, but we can't see them always. So how do we make it so what the public is seeing matches what I don't want to say matches what we're saying, but we have to make it make sense for everybody involved.
Yeah, and I'm with you that when I think of puppy mill, I think of the conditions, the physical conditions that the animals are in, puppies and parents, and then like you said, what kind of care are they putting into ensuring that they're getting a good outcome, good socialization, behavior training, like the best physical outcome they can get. So to me, you can be that and sell wherever. You can be awful and sell in those same places. I can't make the correlation between because you sell in a pet store, you're a puppy mill, or because you're licensed a certain way, you're a puppy mill. To me, that doesn't, a license is a piece of paper. So how does that affect what the condition of my kennel is? So that, yeah, those are weird arguments to me too. You mentioned, I wanted to go back a little bit. You mentioned that most of the breeders you've been to have been Amish breeders. Is that simply because majority of the breeders are Amish, so just, odds are that's where you're going to go? Or are those the people who've been reaching out to invite us to come?
Yeah, so it's a little mix. Going back to that online conference I went to, I actually, like you said, I didn't just roll up and go to a breeding facility, right? I didn't say, hey, knock, knock, let me in. No.
I'm Mindi Callison. Can I come see your facility?
Can you imagine?
Come on in.
Right, yes. And truly, I will say this for the audience, like there are places in Iowa that they have signs on their door that says, I will shoot trespassers. Yeah. Like there are puppy mill owners, there are dog breeders, there are people who fear the public so much that they have signs all over their property. So no, I would never just go knock. And I have not, there have been reporters like the LA Times journalists, they came to Iowa and they were like, well, we're just going to start like calling people and knocking doors. And I was like, no, you are not. Please do not, as two young women, please do not go to rural Iowa and just knock on doors and ask people if they're a puppy mill, right? So anywho, after that conference, I learned a lot. And I saw engagement from the audience that I had not seen. I saw very, very notorious brokers and breeders there that I knew by name and by face. So after all of it, I emailed Dr. Crowney, who's in charge of that canine care program. And I just said, hey, I appreciate you. I understand why this exists. Doesn't mean I agree, especially at the time. But I was like, I understand why this exists now. Thank you for allowing me to attend. And from that, we began a discussion. And we just kind of got to know each other and got to know each other's why. Because I think intentions behind work really matter. And it's important to say that at the exact same time, my colleagues who went to that virtual conference with me, I told them the same thing. I was like, I kind of see a future here. I love the fact that we are investing in education and for breeders, right? Because that is something, as a teacher, I care about education. As someone who has complained about the USDA forever, and I've always said, well, they're just a licensing agency. Now we're seeing someone fill the gap. And in my head, it wasn't the fix, but it is it a tool in the toolbox that helps? Absolutely.
Well, how else are they going to get there? You're not just going to wake up one morning and say, oh, I'm going to change my breeding practices. There's got to be an education piece. Somebody has to come alongside and say, we're going to help you, whether that's with education or with funding to help, and I don't know if they do this or not, but to help improve facilities, or I'm going to help you find how to do that. Or,
right. And that's, so to your question about the Amish, they were the ones who approached Purdue And they said, we've got these kennels. Our dogs are miserable. They don't like us. We're miserable going into the kennels. We don't necessarily like the dogs that are barking at us. Like, how do we fix this? And so Dr. Crony went in and she started documenting, and she'll be the first one to tell you. She went in and knew Amish puppy mills. So she was like, these people aren't going to change. They don't care. So she had some of the same feelings,
preconceived notions.
Exactly. And so she went in and she was like, okay, here are all the things I recommend. And she walked out thinking they're not going to do them. But when they did and then came back for more, she was like, there is something here.
Yeah.
And so she took the time to get to know them. She took the time to start doing research into these kennels and actually figure out the science behind what dogs need. And that's our biggest complaint with the USDA. We know that the USDA started licensing breeders after World War II, and no real formal regulations were put into place until the 60s. And those regulations haven't been updated since. And so it's like, okay, now we're looking at 60 years ago, this regulation, the Animal Welfare Act, was written. The breeders are not educated. The blue book that they have to follow is like 300 pages long. So it's not like they're reading it, which is why that Iowa handbook that just came out, and that's only state specific, but that's why that's so helpful. It's very easy for people to understand. But Dr. Crony went into a community that is often neglected, that is often demonized, and she found a way to not just tell them things. She changed their way of thinking, and she got them to realize the compassion that dogs have, the history of evolution that humans have had alongside these companion animals. And I really think it is changing minds, and that is changing how their communities are evolving too. So if one breeder in the community saw a way to do it better, and they're doing it well, and their kennels look phenomenal, they're inspiring other breeders in the community to do the same thing. So they're making change happen faster than I can from the outside yelling. Is it perfect? No, but we are working within a system that already exists. And if all of our colleagues are focused on what does it look like when we have 0 pet stores in the country, we are 600, I don't even know the number off the top of my head, but 550-ish active puppy stores. So if that is the target, what happens when all of them close? Do we then go online? Do we then focus on whatever? There's so many different ways to drive change that we're really looking at. How can we now also educate breeders so dogs right now aren't suffering? It is not a perfect system. None of this is perfect. So how can we make sure dogs aren't suffering, and the public who ends up buying these dogs, whether or not we like that they're buying them, the public getting these dogs, they're getting healthier dogs. The dogs do not have the genetic issues that they typically have when they're coming out of commercial dog breeding facilities. And hopefully that means fewer dogs will be surrendered to rescues and shelters for behavior issues and health issues. So we're not saying everybody should just quit their work and stop protesting and stop doing all of it. There's still so many different angles with the industry that need updated. And there are still thousands of licensed breeders across the country with issues and without. Starting to just say, hey, some of them are doing better, it makes room for other people to feel encouraged to do better.
Yeah. And it makes the work, so this is our stream, right? This is our continuum where passing pet store ordinances and shutting down online sales sites, that is defensive work, and it's never ending. And this is getting to the breeders. That's being proactive. So still need those people doing these things. And we're still going to be trying to do these things. But also, can we stop the flow up here a little bit? Can we slow the flow a little bit? So then, while we still need people doing all of these things, hopefully maybe their work feels a little less overwhelming and a little less impossible. When we've talked about this when we did our upstream, and we've talked about with shelters and rescues, how it's literally, you're never done. You're never going to be like, okay, rescued all the dogs. It's a non-stop flow of animals coming in, and you're trying to get them out faster than they're coming in, and it's never ending. You will never have a day off. Maybe working up here to improve these breeding practices gives them hope in the work that they're doing, even though it seems like right now it's not. But I think that's where we have to step back and be like, you know what, regardless of your perception, we know, because we have the data, we know the changes this is going to make.
For us, it's not about an endorsement. We are inspired by the idea that someone is trying to educate breeders. Yeah. That doesn't mean we are going to answer for all of the violations of those breeders, or we have to answer for the industries that they're selling to. We just acknowledged that some of these breeders are doing better, and this program is helping.
And we're not a referral organization. That's not what we do. We don't refer people to breeders or to groups of breeders. We will help people make the best decision for them, but we will never say, I shouldn't say never, but we don't say, here's a list of good breeders. If you want this breed of a dog, go here. That's not what we do. It's not our mission. It's not our work. So it doesn't make sense for us to endorse a program.
Right. So because we visited a place this year and it looked good, in a year they might not have the same feelings of excitement about the program or about their work, and they might not do so hot, right? We are not on the hook for that, and I will never be on the hook for that, because again, it's the idea. It is the concept of an idea. It's the fact that these people want to do better.
Yeah. And you've been to facilities that you've been like, and you say something. You're not going to go into a place that has issues that you find concerning and be like, well, they're part of this program, so gold star from me. Like, that's, again, we're not here to endorse the program. We're not here to promote the program. If you go into a facility and you see things that are great, you're going to say it's great. If you see things that are not so great, you're going to say that was not so great.
Right. And I think the important thing there is people want me, specifically Mindi Callison and Bailing Out Benji, to bash. So if I see something I'm not okay with, they want me to throw out the baby with the bathwater and bash everything, all of it. When the same thing I do when I see illegal breeders, illegal brokers. Like, I go through the proper channels to create the change that I think needs to happen. So if I see a breeder in Iowa that needs to have a license, I know I'm filing a complaint on the state level, because we have stronger laws in Iowa than the federal level. Even if I know they need a USDA license, I will do what I think is the best for the animals. So when I've had questions, when I've had concerns, I have handled them in the appropriate way with the appropriate people. I did not run to Facebook. I did not run to other organizations and say, guess what? There was one example of maybe you thinking that you're right. We're dealing with live animals. We're dealing with humans, and we're dealing with the entire country of the United States, where every state is so very different in how they do everything, how they communicate, all of it. So it's like, we have to also show grace for this. And one thing I want to mention, both Dr. Croney and myself, Bailing Out Benji too, have been used for policy. That is not our role. And she has given me explicit permission to say, like, she doesn't want to be used for, that's not Canine Care's role. She doesn't want to be used at the Capitol. She doesn't, just like I don't. And one of the upcoming episodes will be the webinar, which we'll talk about. But I started the webinar off by saying, my experience will not be used for your political agenda, because I knew what was going to happen. I knew the pet store was going to go to the Capitol and say, look, Mindi says Canine Care is okay, when I am not saying Canine Care is okay, so pet stores should exist. I am saying, hey, look, a few hundred breeders are doing so much better. Now let's keep working to make sure the other 3,000 breeders get on board, right?
Very well said. The shifting gears and going back, and if you want to keep going forward, that's fine too. But the original conference that you attended, like fly on the wall style, so they were all in person, the Canine Care breeders, and you got the opportunity to kind of hang out virtually and watch. That's really cool. First of all, that's a really neat way to do this, because now everyone feels safe to speak freely, because we have that separation. So that was really neat. I love that they did that. Who else was virtually participating? Like, what other kinds of people? Was it open to anyone who wanted to join, and who took up the offer? My brain is going to, like, when people say, how dare you even accept the invitation to go to the breeder? Was that the same mentality for this training of, oh, I would never come into their training? But because it was fly on the wall.
It was fly on the wall. There were group chats. There were people texting and going, oh my gosh, can you believe this was said? Like
outside of the webinar?
Outside of the webinar, right? And that's how this world works, right? And that's how, like, when you and I are talking and I'm like, oh, I know what so-and-so is going to say when they hear us say this, it's because I've been a part of those group chats for 14 years. Yeah. This is the first year I didn't get invited to group chats, right? I know how they operate, but it was really the flies on the wall were animal welfare organizations who wanted to spy. And it's not like we had to spy. It was open to the public, but it was a safe way for us to get an inside look into an industry we didn't have access to, which is the same thing Alexis and I did 2 years later when we accepted the invite to go visit the kennels, and people can't quite see that. And I'm sorry, but I started this. I started bailing out Benji when I was an excited kid protesting. I had been to some of the worst puppy mills that were supplying the pet stores that I was protesting. So when someone is like, hey, Mindi, do you want to go see a USDA kennel for the first time? Absolutely. There's no hesitation. And what am I going to see? Am I going to love it? Am I going to hate it? Doesn't matter. It's for the plot. It's for the story. Right. So were my intentions necessarily pure going in? I thought that I was going to have my biases confirmed. Yeah. I truly thought I'm going to walk in, and I've already seen the photos. The pet stores put photos on their website. They put videos on their website. I've seen their version of these breeders, and now I'm going for the first time. And it was exciting, but it was nerve-wracking. And to your point earlier, you're like, why won't other people accept this invite? The conversation has always been safety. There was a legislative hearing in Indiana specifically where a lawmaker was like, well, I've been on this tour. Why don't you come with me to an animal welfare organization? Come on this tour and come specifically to visit this place I've been. The person testifying said, oh, I don't feel safe. And the lawmaker literally was like, you know they're Amish, right? Like peaceful Amish people? Like, what don't you feel safe? So again, looking at the general public, when we tell these lawmakers and the public, oh no, I don't feel safe.
And when a lawmaker has invited you on the trip and you don't feel safe with the lawmaker going into the space.
Right. But then
it's pretty high profile.
Right. So I had spent 2 years emailing Dr. Croney back and forth, getting to know each other. We had several phone calls. The next year there was another conference. I also attended Fly on the Wall style. I didn't want my presence to take away from the educational moment that those breeders need. So I knew if I were there, then the breeders would not feel safe and comfortable in that environment to learn, which takes away from the dogs. And so I didn't want to do that. Then we were given this opportunity to come in person, have conversations, and go on a tour. And that's really what changed everything for me, because it was that intention. It was meeting the breeders. And this isn't fun to say, but like before they were just data points. They were dots on a map. They were an invisible name in our database, and now we're seeing that they are real people. And we are seeing that these real people have real lives and real families, and our work affects what they do. And so that's great. Our work should be affecting what they do, but how can we do it responsibly? Where we are affecting their work in a way that helps the animals and helps the people. Yes. So it's been a learning experience. It is not fun to tell the world that you were wrong about something. What did you tell me? I mean, you've said it a few times about your perception of the Amish because of me.
Well, yeah, I just remember you saying one of the earliest memories, and I've known you for how many years?
Yeah,
many years. And one of the earliest things I remember you saying was like, "Oh, the Amish are evil. Like they're the worst." And it stood out to me like literally, it's like a core relationship memory because when you said that, I was like, "That's weird. What's wrong with the Amish?"
Yeah, right.
Out here living their lives. Like what? But then I was curious because you have an insight into this world that I had never been a part of. So I'm like, tell me more. Like, what do you mean the Amish? Or like, what? And so then you would say like, oh, the worst, like the breeding and the way they treat their animals and they treat them like livestock or worse. And so I was like, wow, okay, I never knew that. And so when you, and again, at the time you did this, the first field research or started participating in some of these canine care calls and meetings, I was not this involved in this yet, but I'm kind of watching you as a friend, and I'm hearing you, talking about like, all these Amish breeders, and they're really trying to be better, and they're trying to learn. And then, so that really stuck with me, because I had that memory of you being like, oh, they're awful. And so that for me was like, oh, wow. Like, that's kind of a big deal, that not only is that happening, but also that Mindi is saying, I was wrong. Like, and not to say I was wrong, they're all great, but that just by virtue of being Amish does not make you
cruel,
and
abusive.
inhumane.
Right.
So I think you said this maybe on the last episode. There's Catholic breeders, there's atheist breeders, there's every group of people are breeders, and they're not all good or bad just by virtue of some other part of their life.
And to be fair, when I said those things, that is because my lens, my experience at the time was going into Amish puppy mills here in Iowa. And seeing how they handled the dogs and seeing how the dogs came out. Like, I mean, two responsible breeder, quote unquote responsible breeder friends of mine, they are responsible, but that word is so loaded, and it kind of depends on what your opinions are. But I took them with me to get, I think we were getting 18 dogs from an Amish breeder once. And they were going to another rescue, because bailing out Benji isn't a rescue. But I used to use those pickups as a way to educate people about what we do. And those two breeders went with me, and they saw dogs that were missing eyes. They saw dogs that were severely matted and had extremely long toenails. And so then I gave them that same bias that I have. I confirmed a bias that we had. But for my friends that are listening and who do rescue dogs from facilities that are Amish or Mennonite or whoever, and they are bad, that is our one lens of this. And we should be excited that there are communities that are Amish communities that are trying to learn and do better. And I think that that's what we all want, right? Because we don't want dogs suffering now. The people are going to be breeding either way. With a license, without a license, we see that happening all the time. Licensing doesn't fix it. Rules don't fix it. Laws don't always fix it. Like,
shutting down pet stores doesn't fix it.
Changing their mentality is something that we never could shame them to do. And that's why it's exciting for me.
Maybe shame isn't the tactic to take.
Right. I mean, we've learned that as humans, right? Guilt and shame can be powerful motivators, but they're not motivating people.
Change makers.
Exactly. We're not getting people to mentally decide what is better for them and what is better for their dogs. The families that I've met, and again, not all, because I haven't met everyone, but the families that I've met are so genuine, and they do know their breeds very well, and they are genetically testing. And a part of this program is that they have to retire the dogs when they're by 6 or 6 litters for females. They're working on rehoming programs of their own. They're trying, because they've heard us say we are dumping dogs in shelters and rescues. Puppy mills are, overpopulating everybody. So now these breeders are also looking at, what does responsible rehoming look like? How can we integrate that into our program? They're asking phenomenal questions of me and Alexis and other veterinarians in this space of what rehoming looks like, what responsible rehoming looks like. So as they're looking down the road for that, adding that program to what they're doing already, they're asking us, how can we do it in a way that we're not going to get yelled at? How can we do it in a way that someone's not saying, well, now they're profiting off the old dogs? It's like they're trying to solve problems, but we just don't want to see it. And it's scary for me to even talk about this, because I know this episode it's going to be received how it's received. And we can't control how other people want to hear it or choose to hear it, but I'm just going to say we're excited and we're happy to see this progress and hope. And we've made some really cool friends along the way that is surprising.
Yeah, I love to hear it. And when you talk about they're asking, how can we do this to not get yelled at? They're not wanting to be attacked either. And it's not only is it, we just haven't known what they're doing, but how many roadblocks have we put up to them being better? What kinds of things has the industry done that has prevented them from being better so far? And part of that is that shame and blame and yelling. You're never going to ask for help when you feel like you're just going to get beaten down. So to back off on that a little bit and open those doors to that communication so that people do feel safe coming to organizations like ours or to Purdue and saying we need help. Can you help us be better? They would never have done that if they didn't feel like they could have trusted Purdue when they did that. So
and I do think the public pressure helped, public education helped. There's one breeder that I visited, Kathleen. She has Dachshunds, very small kennel, and they do not sell to pet stores. So they only sell retail. She was saying that people come to her property with a list of questions, and it's the questions we tell people to ask. And so again, it goes back to the fact that like, if we can educate the consumer, they are going to make the choice. Whatever choice they make is on them. But we have people who are asking the questions we're telling them to ask. And when they go to Caleb and Kathleen's place, and I've called them a puppy mill online, but they're seeing it, they're asking the questions, they have the answers to, make the consumer feel good, then I look like a liar. I look like the person.
I got this checklist from your website. They answered all the questions right, which obviously you can answer however you want.
Right,
so you would have to see it for yourself. But yeah, how can we tell them they're wrong? Which is why I'm so excited about field research. To me, it's the two prongs. It's the breeders and it's the consumers. And I feel like those are the two places that's the opportunity for change. And if we're not meeting those people where they're at, how are we going to make a change? And I think we've been pretty decent at meeting consumers, but no one's meeting the breeders. And how is that ever going to change if we're not going into those spaces?
Right. And to your question earlier, you said, how did we get there? Like something you're like, oh, Mindy's not just knocking on the door. Are people calling you? We do have people calling us now. Mm-hmm. And they're not calling us to say, hey, I was, put on a list, or I'm on your list and I'm not a bad guy. Come look. It's truly people in the industry that are like, I really like what you're doing. Can we have a conversation? And it's just trying to build these little mini micro bridges, because we're never all going to agree on everything. Mm-hmm. And I, again, will always push for adoption first, because that's what we do as people. But I can't push the adoption message on someone who will never buy.
Who will never adopt.
Sorry. Thank you. Someone who will never adopt.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And I feel like so much of this, and this series will probably be the same way. You mentioned earlier that we're not hearing from a lot of people directly, but we hear through the grapevine. And I feel like there's like this whole world of people that are like, oh, okay, what are they doing? Yeah. What's going to happen? Like when somebody's going into the haunted house, like, oh, bailing out Benji's going first. Let's see what happens. And with the other advocacy groups, it's like, oh, what is going to happen? Like, they're going to get yelled at for this, and the big groups are going to come after them. And is it safe? And like, I kind of think the same things, but I'm not going to go first. And so they're kind of watching us go first. And then the same with the breeders, where we want to reach out to groups, we want help, but they're all yelling at us and they're all scary. And then they're like, oh, hold on, bailing out Benji, they're kind of opening that door. So maybe like a couple of breeders creep in first to see how it is, and the others are all watching them to see what's going to happen. And it's kind of like this whole, all these people watching to see what's going to happen. And we're just like,
and we're just going through.
Here we go.
Well, Goldilocks and the Three Bears or something. I don't know.
And I'm confident that I feel like our motivation is right. We do not have ulterior motives here. In fact, you even said very transparently, you kind of did. I mean, you really wanted to have your suspicions confirmed.
That would have been so much easier. It would have been so much easier to go to this place and have it be a puppy mill.
So, our motives are pure. Our methods are pure. We can, I mean, if anyone cares to ask, we can give you all the receipts. So I feel good about what we're doing and the results that we see. Hopefully people are going to follow along. And we'll just be the brave souls going first.
Well, I do want to clear up a misconception too. Much like our colleagues aren't thrilled that we are leaning into this new space, these new acquaintances, whatever you want to call them, the other side also has radical groups who are very mad that breeders trust bailing out Benji.
Other breeders?
Just in general.
Okay.
There are breeders who are mad. There are stores. There are lobbyists. Like, again, we think that they're all the same. And just like we have so many different types of animal groups, so do they. But there are people, like I had someone who, it wasn't online, but they released a little publication that was like, it's time to skin the crocodile. And the whole article is about me being a crocodile and like sneaking into these facilities and getting permission. And someday I'm going to bite everybody and it's going to ruin them. And it's like, but I haven't yet. It has been a year and we're just all feeling. I think in my first post I made about this, I was like, we don't have the answers. None of us have a guidebook. Not even the groups that have been leading the conversation have a guidebook. So what we are doing is we are crossing a very tumultuous river and we are feeling for stones. We are feeling our way across. And when we feel something that's rocky or shaky, we don't step on it. We're not trying to drown. We're not trying to get swept up in the current. Like, we are not stupid. And when that was how my colleagues felt at first, they're like, oh, Mindy's been fooled. They fooled her was the phrase. It's like, I have not animal stuff aside, we all have so much life experience. We're not just going to get fooled by the very industry we've been trying to change the entire time. Right. So I think it's okay for people to just realize this is a new path. We are trying something very different. And we've all figured it out by now. Bailing out Benji isn't afraid to say we're wrong.
Right.
And so if in 5 years, I have to look back and say, we tried something different. We tried to make connections and it didn't work. Is anyone ever failing by trying something new and learning? No, it's never a failure. So we just need to be okay not having all the answers. And we have to be okay with not being right all the time. And just let life show and let the cards play, I guess.
Yeah, like you said, for the plot.
Since we're talking about our field research, I think now is a good time to talk about our volunteers in the field. If you've ever been interested in learning more about what we do, I really encourage you to find an event in your community. If you follow us on Facebook every Thursday, we post where our volunteers will be at events that weekend. Colorado team, Missouri, Nebraska, Utah, and Wisconsin teams do tons of events and make it really easy to meet them. When you meet in person, you're able to ask your questions in person, get some answers, and have conversations about their presence in your community and what you can do to get involved and help us in puppy months.
Hi all, I'm here for another research update, and this week we have some pretty exciting news. There's been a project that we have been working on for probably the past year that we've kept kind of hush-hush, just internal, but we are really excited to finally be able to release this information. We now have on our website a link to an interactive map, which is essentially a search tool for the public and for advocates with all the information that we have in our database about state licensed and federally licensed breeders. This is a search tool that advocates and the public can hopefully use to help keep informed about what's happening at these facilities. So essentially we have a little bit of information, little profiles for people. You can search up any licensed breeder or broker and they are in that database. When the database was last updated, we have some delay, of course, in information, but hopefully you'll be able to find information about licensed breeders and brokers, about what type of violation history they have, what's their animal count, what's their USDA license or state license, just so that people can stay informed. We really want this to be a helpful tool, especially to the public who might be interested in buying puppies. This is a way that they can get as much information about a breeder as possible without maybe having to come to us first. If you have additional questions, of course, please reach out to us. But this is a helpful tool that is hopefully going to help people do their research before they buy and help advocates know what's happening across the country with those licensed breeders and brokers.
There's so much to say. This episode's very long. There's so much that can be said, and so that's why we're calling this our series, our field research series. So we're going to highlight our webinar that we did last year, and that was kind of the first look that everyone got into what we were doing. And then Alexis is going to join us, and we're going to talk a little more about specifics of what we've seen and what we've learned. We're not going to name drop. I know a lot of people are hoping we name drop.
What, names and addresses? Where did you go?
Right. We're not in the business of doing that, but I'm really excited to be bringing this conversation to everyone just because it is such a different perspective. And again, we're not telling people to stop your work. We're telling you, be more specific, right? Come to us for actual data if you want to use data to help with your mission or your strategy, whatever you're working on. But I don't know.
And allow for nuance.
Yeah. Exactly.
That's all we're asking.
So anyway, it'll be a fun few episodes. I'm really nervous and excited. And again, I kind of get I like it when I make people think, and even when it makes them mad. I know we've seen our colleagues in this space over the last year change some of their wording. Now they're including online puppy mills in their education tactics because we started talking about it. We're seeing this happen. We're seeing communication styles. So I'm excited. We're driving change on both sides of this, whether or not people like it. I've done so much work in this space. This feels like the most important thing we've ever done. And it's because it's challenging. It's not easy. And we're getting institutions who are mad at us on both sides. And that shows me we're doing the right thing. Because if we can keep disrupting this industry and forcing these institutions to look inward on both sides again and figure out what the actual right way forward is, or can we come up with the right way together? I don't know, it's exciting. We're like little peacemakers, bridge builders.
Bridge builders.
Yeah. So, well, we were going to wrap up with our gala that's coming up. We're really excited.
Yes.
Still looking for sponsors.
Yep.
Still looking for some tickets that we're going to sell.
Yeah.
We're in a slightly smaller space. Do you want to talk about our new location a little bit?
We're at Mainframe Studios in Des Moines. It is a conglomeration of artist studios. It's a really, really, really cool space. And so they've got upper floors the bottom floor too. All these different artist spaces where people can rent space, work there. They open it up. You can come, browse the stores, buy stuff from them there. And then on the lower level, they have event space that they rent out.
And the whole building's like a nonprofit.
Yes. Yeah. It's really cool. And they've got this amazing mural. Like the entire building is like this amazing artwork. So it's a real gem in downtown Des Moines. So really excited for the new space, the new vibe. It's all windows on one side. So when it gets dark, it's all sparkly. Des Moines not like a big city, but we got some little bit of sparkles when it gets dark. So that's good. So excited for the new space. We have capacity, I think, for probably around 200 people. We've run like 250 in the past. So slightly smaller, but for sponsorships, it gets you in front of 200 dog lovers. So we reach out to a lot of our animal type organizations for sponsorships, and then just anyone around the local community as well. To sponsor the event, we'll have some fun entertainment. We're looking at trying to make it more interactive this year for guests, so that you're not, in the past, you've kind of come, we have a dinner, you sit down, you listen to speakers. We're still going to have food. We're still going to have speakers, but trying to get some more people on their feet and doing some different interactive things throughout the night.
We want to make it more Bailing Out Benji and less corporate. And when we first started the conference, I'm not kidding. I was still working as a preschool teacher, and I told my colleagues on a Friday, I was like, I want to have a gala for Bailing Out Benji. By Monday, I had the date picked and the place booked. That's me. Yeah. We all know that's me. When I want to do something, like, yes, let's do it. All we could do, just like the rest of Bailing Out Benji, we modeled our work off of the work of others, right? We watched what others were doing and we tried. It's never quite felt like us.
No, I agree.
And I feel like every year it's gotten more like, I'm planning a wedding every year. Like, why is this
big wedding reception vibes?
Yeah. And so now we're really trying to make it, this is who we are as people. Last year, all of our speakers were Bailing Out Benji speakers. We're going to announce our Volunteer of the Year soon. So we're really trying to make it community. We're trying to make it our community and not duplicate what other people are doing.
And we want to raise money, and we want to celebrate the work that we have done, and the people who are doing that work with us are volunteers in that part of our community. So I'm excited. It's going to be a great fun event. We already have a link for sponsorships. Our ticket link is going live.
Truly, like, beginning the next 3 months will just be gala, which is always stressful, but I don't know, I'm excited. I love it. It's like a big homecoming almost for our supporters and our volunteers. And when are you sitting in a room with 200 other people who care about the same mission as you? And that feeling is so electric. And last year at our gala, I was able to talk about some of this field research work, and our supporters loved it. They loved hearing that we are finding new ways to continue making progress. And so,
that's what keeps us going. For as much pushback as we get, there are so many people who are excited about where we're going. And that to me there's always going to be detractors, but it's the people that are excited that are like, oh yes, I love this. Let's keep going. So we do.
The next few episodes, I think the next episode we're going to record an intro and an outro, but it's going to be just the webinar.
Clips from that webinar.
Yeah. And then we're going to get into it. So thanks for sitting with us and listen with an open mind and an open heart, and just know we haven't changed. We've changed, right? But we haven't. Our work has
The heart
not.
of the work that we're doing has not changed.
Right. And there can be room for two things to be true at once. There can be room for nuance. Just try to listen without ferociously taking notes about how mad you are. Just try to listen as we go through the series.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, maybe get a few episodes in. Like, you can jot down your questions, but maybe get a few episodes in, and then you'll be like, oh, okay, I see what's happening, rather than, But also, we always do have our reach out if you do have questions for us, because kind of anticipating that there will be questions as we go through, as we have had these conversations so much that we kind of forget what maybe people are wanting to know. And I'm still enough of that outside mindset that I can ask some of those. But as we're talking, if you have questions, our very last episode in this series might be addressing some of those questions that we have heard. So yeah, if you have questions, please send them our way, and we will incorporate that into the series as we go through.
Absolutely. So don't forget to rate, review, subscribe, like us, follow us, like all those fun things. We're on
Tell your friends, tell your neighbors.
Yep. All forms of social media. And please encourage people to listen to our podcast. I really feel like it's different than last time. Last time was so themed and so topicked, and this is just like a continuing conversation about the state of puppy mills.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you all so much for joining us again this week. We're happy to sit with you again next week.